on this Thursday night. Protesters in Calgary accuse the Prime Minister of leaving Alberta out in the cold. At Issue brings its take on the government's new economic plan.
We will be opening a file on it and looking into what happened.
A distraught parent reacts to a CBC News investigation, another case of child abuse in Manitoba's foster system. Secret recordings reveal what officials knew and what they did.
This allows a potential solution to come.
And 2 high-profile resignations at a private boys' school under national scrutiny. Is it a first step toward reparation? This is The National. The Trudeau government took some heat today in the oil patch and in Parliament for the fiscal update announced yesterday. They say their plan will stimulate business. The opposition took aim, though, at how much the government is spending.
This year, the deficit will be 3 times the size the Liberal platform promised, and next year it will be even bigger. And that was the year when the budget was supposed to balance itself.
Mr. Speaker, what I continue to hear from the member of Carleton are buzzwords from first-year economic textbooks. What I do, though, importantly, is think about how we're going to listen to actual Canadians and what really matters to them.
Morneau went on to say Canadians are concerned about jobs for today and the next generation. The Prime Minister was in Alberta today to sell that plan to business leaders and everyone really, but his highly skeptical audience wasn't buying most of it. Angry protesters in Calgary drove home the point that Canada's oil patch feels abandoned in the midst of a crisis. Aaron Collins was there for Justin Trudeau's rather frosty welcome.
Angry and ignored, the feeling among the 2,000 protesters here almost palpable. Frustrated by the enormous discount Alberta crude is being sold for, about $40 per barrel less than the U.S. benchmark price these days.
It's a huge economic crisis for Canada, for Alberta, for every Canadian. They should be concerned about the fact that oil and gas producers are not making any money.
The reason for that crisis and this protest, an inability to get Canadian oil to market due to a lack of pipeline capacity. And rightly or wrongly, in this crowd, much of the blame for that lies with Justin Trudeau, in town today to speak about that very problem.
Because we're forced to sell our oil at a discount, Canada's economy is losing an estimated $80 million a day. That's unacceptable.
But no concrete solutions on offer in this speech or in this week's fiscal update.
Even industry isn't entirely united on the best ways to move forward on how to fix this differential.
Well, the Prime Minister did meet with industry heavyweights today, some of whom have been calling for mandated reductions in oil production. The hope being that decreasing the production of oil here will bring prices for Canadian crude back up. Another option being proposed, increasing oil by rail until a new pipeline is built, something Alberta has asked the federal government to pay for, a plan the province's premier was disappointed to see left out of the federal fiscal update.
If there was this kind of economic crisis going on in the manufacturing sector in Ontario, we're pretty sure it would make its way into the first 2 paragraphs of the fiscal update.
Unresolved, it's an economic crisis that could cost Alberta's treasury as much as $4 billion in 2019. A political crisis for a government facing an election in the spring and an increasingly hostile electorate. Aaron Collins, CBC News, Calgary.
Now, the government has been unable to push through a pipeline expansion after buying the Trans Mountain project for $4.5 billion this summer. The construction has been slowed by a federal court ruling that suggested more meaningful consultation with Indigenous communities was needed, so the government is trying to do that now. But according to the fiscal update, it has made $70 million on the investment already. On an annualized basis, that would be $200 million. The government's also taking some heat today for giving the Canadian media industry a boost. The Liberals argue that supporting independent news is vital for democracy. But as Catherine Cullen tells us, critics feel that support is a political ploy to curry favor with journalists.
Justin Trudeau thinks the job of the media is to shower him with praise.
It's a scathing allegation.
He's forcing Canadian taxpayers to dole out $600 million in order to try and buy Trudeau the media's support as he goes to the polls.
And the Conservatives are digging in.
That is a policy of instituting state-run journalism.
Leader Andrew Scheer said in a tweet that instead of helping oil and gas workers, Justin Trudeau is handing out money to journalists who will cover him in an election year.
In fact, the government wants an independent panel from the world of journalism to decide who qualifies for tax credits and incentives, though it is the government who will decide who participates in that panel. It's quick to defend the plan and journalists.
What they're saying is that any government of the day can put some money on the table and buy a journalist, which is ridiculous.
He says the media industry is in crisis and needs the help. And it's worth noting that Canadian governments have long funded some journalism, including the CBC. But this disagreement turns the media and its coverage into something of a political football for both sides. One union representing many of Canada's journalists, including many CBC employees, is pushing back against the allegation this will buy off the media.
It's not like, for example, if the Kitchener-Waterloo Record was to report something negative about the government, they're going to take away their tax credit. They can't. They're eligible for that.
The head of the Post media chain, who says he hopes to hire more journalists because of this funding, is dismissing the criticism too.
The Conservatives that are standing up criticizing this are just trying to make political hay when there's no political hay to be made.
In fact, today's debate led to an argument between a journalist and Conservatives about whether they were spreading fear about the press.
Why is it fear-mongering? You've labeled it something.
You just made a judgment.
You made a judgment.
You made a judgment.
No, we're asking.
It's already started, folks. It's already started.
Yes.
Catherine Cullen, CBC News, Ottawa.
You just called me a